bullfrogs and bears. When you're out walking, steer clear of the cracks in the pavement for fear of the worst. Bad luck, or bears, or broken backs, whatever you do, don't step on those cracks. Say for sorry, you won't take that chance. Knock on wood, tap your head, hold their eye when toasts are said. The unseen fear is mankind's greatest curse. Though sat safely in squares, we might avoid bears. What else do we miss when we do? See, Orpheus was told to trust, lest beloved dust return to dust, and a pillar of salt was the glancing doubter's lot. Looking to change the not yet there, the naysayer forgets the way to sing. But sometimes you have to cut the string and drift through unknown space before you soar. Trapped in lines of a square, you'll never know if life could be something more. Outside comfortable confines, bears might be no more than bullfrogs. And so today, I will step on the cracks in the pavement. So yes, I'm Saoirse. I'm an Irish writer based here in Cardiff. I moved here about 3 years ago now, which is kind of hard to believe how fast that time's flown. Alongside my writing, I also work with a few dance companies as company manager for Richard Chapel Dance, and then as a producer and theatre maker alongside that. I can't really remember when I first began writing. It's sort of been something that's always there, but I began properly writing and performing poetry in earnest towards the end of my first year of university, which is back in about 2015. And then earlier this year I left my previous job in order to kind of give more time and space to my freelance work and writing, and it's been really nice developing my practice over the past kind of 6 months. I found that my practice is one of gathering. I think that as I go through each day I sort of collect snippets of the day, whether it's an overheard conversation on the bus, a sign in a window, a magpie doing something funny, some news story, or even objects I find, and I kind of then gather those through the day, forage for ideas, and then when I sit down on my writing days to sit down at my desk and compose something, I will sort of sift through all those little nuggets I've collected through the day and through the week, and see what speaks to me in the moment and has potential to be drawn out into a poem. And I keep those sort of things, so I could revisit something I picked up 6 months ago or a year ago, and suddenly it has legs as a poem. So yeah, that's kind of the basics of how I write. Yeah. This is I've been dreaming lately. I've been dreaming lately of Charlie Chaplin's boots, of old cracked soles and turned out toes, and of skint kids pinching food. I've been dreaming lately of those things without space in the day, of sad things and quiet things, and of those so far away. I've been dreaming lately of the soldier without a home, of lofty dreams and horror scenes, of the lied to and cast out alone. I've been dreaming lately of all the words left unsaid, of the could have beens and the should have beens, and of the lives we lived instead. I've been dreaming lately of parties at Downing Street, of sly contracts and selfless acts, and of an NHS run off its feet. I've been dreaming lately of hope and things that might be, of optimism and of brave decisions, of a future for you and for me. I've been dreaming lately of the words to that Cranberries song, of the children in war and families apart, and the egos that brought it all on. I've been dreaming lately, and I'll dream until dreaming's done. Live a life that lives up to the dreaming of every soul under this sun. So, sunlight softly. I'd like to write of the stillness of an early March morning, of the couple tripping laughing past my window, finishing Friday night as the 6 a.m. sunlight softly streams in, bathing tangled white sheets and rented magnolia walls. But sometimes my pen does not work. A moment exists, and I have to just let it be. It's an interesting question, actually, and I was thinking about this with a friend recently who was thinking of moving away from Ireland, and wondering how moving countries and moving places would impact their writing, not just in a career sense, but actually in the kind of core of their writing. And I think I've found it interesting because at the core my writing is still my writing, and it's the same as it ever was, but I think that certain topics have kind of caught me because they're quite similar countries in ways, and yet there are sort of some pronounced differences, and there's always going to be something there in having moved away from a place that you know. And I've been working a lot on, well, I've been currently working on an album with Syncex Records and an electronic music duo here called Larch, and we've talked a lot about this Welsh word Cynefin, which is kind of gets loosely translated as habitat, but it's also this sense of kind of the place that you belong in, and a place that you can kind of feel the influence of that place on you and on your decision making and everything. And we've been talking about how, you know, you have that quite readily with somewhere that you're from, but there are ways of sort of beginning to build that then where you are. And so this album we've been working on, which hopefully will be released later this year or early next year, has been looking a lot at community building and finding senses of home where you are. Because yes, it's funny, you move to a new place and there's little things that you don't really realise. So for example, I thought, being Irish, I thought I'm ready for Welsh rain, I'm sorted, it's no problem. I've lived with rain my whole life, but Welsh rain is different. It comes at you sideways and it gives you no warning. So yes, I got caught out a few times early on, and yeah, it's small things that you suddenly realise, and seeing a different language on the street signs, even though you're used to seeing bilingual street signs, you feel like you should be able to read both, and suddenly you can't. And yeah, it's been interesting kind of finding new languages and new settings seeping into my work and feeling more natural with each kind of passing month, which is, yeah, it's been interesting. Great movements all began with a manifesto, and so as the creator, curator, instigator of my life made manifest, this is mine. Last night at the theatre, a love song played. A woman in row C placed her right hand on her companion's left shoulder. He interlaced his fingertips with hers, took her left hand in his right, and held tight. This manifesto calls for romance. This morning, a little girl laughed and declared that she would have all of the cakes. Her mum and dad laughed too, bought 3 different slices, and so that the 3 of them each had a third of all of the cakes, every crumb. This manifesto calls for joy. This evening, I listened to the news. New hurt across the world. War, hunger, refugees at sea separated only by radio waves, at a distance, and by our front doors. Do more. This manifesto, it calls for care. On Saturday, we ate birthday lunch. A band took to the tiny stage of the local, and all of us danced and sang along to songs we didn't actually know, but enjoyed. This manifesto calls for a party. On Sunday, I saw a beetle on a leaf, heard a blackbird song and watched the martins slowly build their nest. A lazy day of rest. Calm yourself. This manifesto calls for peace. On Monday, I learned a new word. I practiced parallel parking and managed to play a B chord on my guitar sort of right. I tried. This manifesto calls for curiosity. On Tuesday, I couldn't figure out the instructions for a new gadget I bought. I misquoted bell hooks and misunderstood completely what I was asked to do. Muddle through. This manifesto calls for not knowing. On Wednesday, a colleague offered to have a little biscuit, in case anyone in the office had missed out. My friend sent me a song he thought I'd like, and in turn I sent it on to someone else. Beyond ourselves. This manifesto calls for sharing. On Thursday, I watered a houseplant I think might be dead. I forgot to season the dinner and heard the bin men just too late to put them out. This manifesto calls for trying. On Friday, I called my family to hear the news of their day. A pal came round for coffee, and we passed an evening with chess and good CDs. Just happy. This manifesto calls for love. And tomorrow, I'll cross my fingers for a mate's MOT. It's not my car, but I'll touch wood that banger's roadworthy. We'll see, because this manifesto, it calls for hope. It's funny, it's a straightforward question and yet it's almost difficult. I suppose the short answer is that I can't really imagine not writing. There's something almost primal to it in that need to express. But I suppose at the basis of everything I do, both in my writing and then in my producing work and leading theatre workshops and so forth, and even then the kind of more social things I do and volunteering things like being involved with my local community food co-op, Slowdown, things like that. It's all, I suppose the basic drive of it all is to create connection and hear new voices and create a space to connect and find community with other people. And as anyone who knows me will say, I can talk for Ireland, and so I think the words are my territory in which I feel like I can contribute my part to the world and make a difference in my own way, and whatever that is, whether it's just giving someone something nice to read over their morning coffee or something that can be on a platform saying something big and important. I think it all adds up to the same thing of connecting to people. So this is "My bed is not as famous as Tracey Emin's." Sitting in Congress in the Tate, Tracey's bed lay in state as 1,000 curious eyes crossed its sheets. The debris of every day, crumbs, clothing, creases on display. Private space prompts shock in being out of place. Now my bed falls in the gaze as the conference call relays private space over my shoulders into view. In network-connected space, this disrupted sense of place puts our homes on show, and so our planes are blurred. Emin exhibited her bed. For art's sake, her life was spread under the gaze of a gallery and the world. Her sheets unfurled a statement, but my bed was never meant to be on camera, pushed from private into frame. My bed is not famed like Tracey Emin's, yet in the background it begins to blur layers of life in LCD display. Flip a coin and hope that it lands on both sides at once, because no matter what you do, it's not enough. In a world built by the unfair sex, you had better bet you're in the wrong before you start. Play more than your fair part and compromise. Every single thing you do should be revised. Responsibility is women's work. Don't wear a short skirt. Don't flaunt what you are, and don't be a prude, a prig or a tart. Don't lead nice guys on, but be ever polite. Don't you know you're a bitch if your smile isn't bright? Don't walk after dark or take a taxi alone. Be vivacious and fun, but be good and stay home. Since Lilith and Eve, it's all been our fault, and in laying the blame, you'll always rub salt in our wounds as we endure the death by 1,000 cuts that is our lot. Each new nick stings more because on top of fading scars, we have hundreds more to go. And nothing we can ever do is right. So though you know it won't, you have to pray it might. You'll flip a coin and hope that it lands on both sides. Yes, that's quite an interesting question at the moment, I think, because I feel like I'm in sort of the motorbike, actually, there you go, that's the momentum. I feel like I'm in a moment where I'm getting to figure out where I'm standing and where I want to move towards, and just sort of shaping that plan, or I say plan, that imagining. And I think that the simple answer to it is probably that I want to be a busy working writer, making my living from my craft. And I mean that, not just writing poems, but developing my practice, publishing, performing, running workshops, and sharing in literature and poetry and art with other people. And then I suppose in more specific terms, I have an idea percolating at the back of my mind for a collection based on Irish histories in Wales, and I really want to kind of devote some time to developing and researching and creating that. And something I've long dreamed of since I was in university is being part of the Hay Writers at Work scheme or programme. And I remember visiting Hay on Wye a few years ago and just falling in love with the place. And so there's things like that. But mainly, yes, I want to be writing and I want to be sharing.